discourse, what the leaders have to say is what the church really is doing about this tension. Thank you very much. Please. Go ahead.
This may seem like a small issue, but I'm thinking that the Roman Catholic Church in Africa has a primary experience of Roman Catholicism the same way we do, which is through the Eucharist. I'm wondering what is happening in Africa on the magisterium's translation of the Roman Rite. I know what's happening in the United States of the translation into English. I'm wondering what is happening in Africa. And it's not a small issue.
Thank you very much. It is not a small issue. But unfortunately, the conversation is very muted. Yeah. In the sense that we really, on these matters, rarely toe a different line. We really don't. I know that as we speak, the body of African ecclesiastics has endorsed the translation. There is not a conversation going on that I'm aware of some aspects, the way it's raised some issues in other parts of the church. There is not that I'm aware of. I know, for example, in Southern Africa, in South Africa especially, that there is actually, the translation is actually in use already in South Africa. And I don't expect that there will be any conversation around it for the rest of the continent. And I want to express a certain sadness with that, because I believe that as a continent, as a church in Africa, we're rich in symbolism, we're rich in a variety of liturgical expressions that I believe is a source of enrichment for the world church. But, you know, that conversation again is not happening. But I think it's a small issue. Thank you. I want to come back.
I was wondering, have you given this talk in Africa, and how the reception?
Thank you very much. I have developed aspects of it in a theological context. And yes, there is some unease in the sense that when I say it's an invitation to conversation, I really mean that, but sometimes that's not the way it's been received. So, you know, it's not quite predictable what the reaction is. But yes, I have developed aspects of it. But I have to say, you know, when I talked about the trend of theological scholarship, in one particular context at the Catholic University of Eastern Africa, it was in a theological small context, and there was a bishop there present an archbishop actually from Nigeria, who was quite, surprisingly to me, quite enthused, or rather enthusiastic about the prospects. And I want to hope that that is something that is genuine and that would actually translate into some creative approaches towards ministry from the continent. But I don't want to say that it's all been positive. There's been, shall we say, certain expressions of unease and resistance, which didn't surprise me. Please.
In your talk, you have used almost synonymously the Roman Catholic Church,
yes,
and the Christian Church.
Yes.
And somehow there seems to be, in my own listening to this and thinking about it, the question, what is the difference in approaching this issue of the Christian church in Africa versus the Roman Catholic Church in Africa? In other words, one could use that same question. What about the Roman Catholic Church in China versus the Christian church in China? And so, I mean, you may want to comment about this, but it seems to me that maybe by using both terms, Roman Catholic Church in Africa and the Christian church in Africa, we confuse definitions and terms and get lost in history and so forth. So I'm just wondering how you might approach this.
Thank you. I talked about Roman Catholic Church and the Christian Church with the understanding that I'm looking at it from the tradition that I'm familiar with, that is the Catholic tradition, and but without in any way suggesting that that is representative of the entire Christian community on the continent, because there is a lot of diversity and variety in terms of the ecclesial composition of the Christian community on the continent. And I think I was less worried, I'm less worried about definitions because I presume that the issues I'm dealing with appeal in a particular sense to the Roman Catholic Christian tradition. And that's why I would not, dwell much on definition. But the point you make, I would affirm very strongly that, or at least the point you suggest that, the Christian community in Africa is a very, very diverse composition, and so there are issues that pertain to the community, the Christian community at large, and there are issues that also pertain to the Roman Catholic Church in particular. And it's the latter that I've been focusing on mostly. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay.
Well, you talk about these taboos, but when you talk about them, I see those in the United States as well. And maybe because when you look at the leadership of the Roman Catholic Church in the United States, I think that there are taboos that are not being talked about. And maybe I could be wrong about that, but I don't hear about it or see it or understand it. Do you think that the church in Africa, maybe even a leader in talking about these taboos, could possibly change the way the rest of the world sees some of this?
I would like to see that happen in the sense that I honestly believe that ours is a growing church. We're coming to a point where I believe we're becoming more aware of our own identity. And I want to talk about this next week. As our identity as a growing church, with a voice that can, in many ways, offer new directions to the world church. That's what I believe. But I believe that for that to happen, we should not rely simply on a particular segment of the church to carry this voice or to offer these, I would say, insights, resources, or gifts to the world church. It has to be a participatory process. So it's not just what the bishops say. It's going to be what the church as a community experiences and articulates through its theologians, through its ministers, through its laymen and women. It's got to be all of that taken into consideration. So I believe that yes, the church in Africa is a growing church and has a lot to offer. And I would also like to see this church avoid some of the mistakes of the past.